It's summertime and the sky is still powdery pink behind the Eiffel Tower. Yet at Maxim's, the waiters in tailcoats are fluttering between tables that have been reserved months earlier. Maxim's is over 100 years old. It was April 1883 when Maxim Gaillard bought this establishment at 3 Rue Royale from an Italian ice cream maker and turned it into a restaurant. The beautiful Irma de Montigny soon made this her watering hole and the club for snobs of the day. The atmosphere, the welcome and the good food also play a role. But people also come to Maxim's to rub shoulders with the select. The women are always lovely, the atmosphere warm, and the service perfect. There's a blend of business people, politicians, popular singers, boxers, pioneer airmen, and society women. Claude Roger, the charismatic maitre d', has been here for 25 years and tells us more. Let's go back to 1934 when Monsieur Octave, the owner at the time, called upon Monsieur Albert, who was a great professional in the restaurant business and who used to go to Churros in Deauville for the high season. Come back to Paris for the winter with his brigade, and when Monsieur Octave took over Maxim's, Monsieur Albert immediately impressed the customers by saying to them, "Now you will come on Friday evening chez Maxim's to create something exceptionnel."
I'd like to show you the recipe for langoustine charlotte with eggplant. So the first ingredients are, first of all, the langoustines. You need 3 kilos of langoustine for 5 to 6 people, 2 kilos of tomato, a kilo of eggplant, 3 onions, 2 shallots, a bunch of chives, and a bunch of basil. The bunch of aromatic herbs, which is essential, also olive oil, the fish stock, and obviously don't forget the salt and the pepper. So I'll begin with the sauce. For the base, I need a diced mix of the shallots and an onion. And all of this I'm going to sweat with 2 or 3 spoonfuls of olive oil. I put in my shallots and my onions for 5 minutes, and they will sweat over a gentle flame with the tomatoes, which I'm going to chop up coarsely, and then I'll cook them for 5 to 6 minutes, again with olive oil. I add the diced shallots and the onion. They've now been cooked in the olive oil, and I add this to the tomato. And now I'm going to add my langoustine. Now I can grind them up, and I'm going to mix them again and cook this together with the fish stock, the salt, the pepper, and the aromatic herbs until I get a coulis or a sauce. So I pour on my stock, I bring it to a boil, and I let it cook for 20 to 30 minutes. So this is the sauce. You see, it's a lovely color. At least I think it's lovely. So I cut my eggplants into thin slices, and I'm going to cook them now in the pan in a little bit of olive oil. So here once again, once I've nicely browned my eggplants, I soak up the excess oil with a nice clean paper towel. As I say, in order to remove the excess oil. So here are the langoustine, which I have peeled and kept on ice. And now I'm going to pan saute them and season them in olive oil. I keep them a little pink. They're not too well done because they'll finish cooking in the charlotte itself. Then I pluck some basil leaves. I take the nicest ones, which I'm now going to cut and shred. Here's the mold for the charlotte. I set up a few slices of eggplant at the bottom, like this. And I now place my langoustines tightly arranged.
Encore une.
There's one more here.
Je mets un peu de basilic.
Add a little basil.
Je lui mets légèrement de sauce.
And I
Très peu.
moisten this slightly with some sauce,
Parce que j'en mettrai un
but
peu
only
dans
very
le
little,
four.
because I'll be using it around the dish.
Couvre avec
And now
deux
I
quelques
cover
tranches
with 2
d'aubergine.
lovely slices of
Voilà la
eggplant,
charlotte
and
montée.
here we have the shallot.
Donc je vais faire
Now,
une sauce
I'm
mornay.
going to make a mornay
Donc, la
sauce,
sauce mornay, c'est une béchamel
which is a
avec
bechamel
quelques
sauce,
jaunes d'œufs et
which
à
is
peu près
made with a few egg yolks and a
Alors,
little
je-
whipped cream.
Je mets une cuillère de mornay bien.
So I put in a spoonful of mornay, nicely spread out, but not too much.
Voilà.
There we are.
Et je vais mettre sous la salamandre
And
pour
now
obtenir
I'm going to use the
un bon
salamander
glaçage, que ce soit
to
bien
get a
bleu,
nice glazing,
que ce soit plus joli à
so
la
that it's
présentation.
all nicely golden brown, as lovely looking as possible.
On la présente
Now
le
I finish my
plus
dish
possible.
with
Je fais un
the
cordon
final
de
touches.
sauce Nantua.
I add a string
La
of
ciboulette
sauce,
que j'ai hachée.
and
J'en
now
fais des petits
the small
paquets.
packs of the chopped ives for decoration.
décor.
And I finish this with a little
quelques
diced
tomates.
tomato, just to give some color, some freshness.
La fraîcheur. Je tourne l'assiette
And
pour que
I
la sauce
turn the
couvre
plate
bien
around
le
so
fond
that
de
the sauce covers the bottom nicely.
Et j'enlève mon
I
cercle.
remove the mold,
Et je vous présente
and here I
l'assiette
present to
terminée.
you the finished
Charlotte de
dish.
langoustine aux aubergines.
Langoustine shallot with eggplant.
Il faut reconnaître que Maxim est un lieu féerique.
Everybody will agree that Maxim's is a magical and unique place in the world. People come from all over the world to forget their everyday worries they have in the kind of lives we lead today. What really makes Maxim's is the charm of the women when they feel beautiful. They come to Maxim's to relish and bask in this feeling. That's precisely what Maxim's is there for, namely to offer this charm and pleasure. One Christmas Eve we had the president of an African country with about a dozen guests, and to please his guests he offered each lady a diamond rivière that each waiter presented at dessert time, and each gentleman was given a gold watch.
Juste au moment du dessert, et chaque monsieur avait eu droit à une montre en or.
Je vous présente la recette.
I'd now like to present you the recipe for Chalon à la Ferté
Et
duck.
voici les ingrédients
And here are the
nécessaires pour
ingredients
cette
you
recette.
require for this recipe. First of all, the duck, a Chalon duck, which weighs about 2.5 kilos, which you're going to have to prepare to truss. And I'm now going to cook it for 35 minutes, keeping it nicely pink. The foie gras, which I'm going to slice and pan saute, and which will be used as a garnish at the last minute in the plate. Some turnips, and I'm going to make a little candied turnip preserve. So here we have the bunch of turnips. I've sliced the turnips in discs, and I'm going to cook these with salt, some sugar, some water, and a little butter, just to make sure they're nicely candied and brown. The duck liver, which I've poached in some duck stock, which I will use later on for the sauce, and the potatoes. A special kind of potato for the garnish, the second garnish, which we call Maxim's potatoes. Now, the first duck stock is made from the carcass. This was nicely covered with water and cooked for 2 to 3 hours. That's the first base. This is filtered through the sieve and left to rest for a night. And the next day, this duck stock is going to be used for the sauce. So once I have this stock, I poach my livers in it, and I reduce this, and I thicken my sauce. I thicken my duck stock with the livers that have been put through the sieve. While the duck is cooking, I cook my turnips. The turnips I cut up into discs, and I cook them with salt, sugar, butter and water. Nicely candied, nicely brown. You see that? The duck foie gras now is sliced, and I've seized the slices rather nicely, and I put them to one side, keeping them warm, and now arrange these on slices of toast. Now, the duck, I have removed the fat carefully, I've drained it, you see. It's cooked to the slightly pink stage. So I
les cuisses,
remove the leg.
je lève les filets.
I remove the fillets.
Donc cette carcasse, comme je vous l'ai expliqué
And
auparavant,
this carcass, as I was explaining before, will be used for the duck stock.
je dégraisse,
I remove the fat.
je pars un peu les excédents de gras.
I trim off the excess fat. There we are.
Alors voici les canards.
Now,
que j'ai
here
fait
is
griller, vous
the
voyez,
duck
les deux
meat,
filets.
which we're going to grill
Bien marqué,
with the
comme ça, la
fillets,
peau est bien
nicely
sèche,
marked like this.
bien
The skin is
craquant.
nice and dry, nice and crisp.
Les deux filets,
I arrange my 2 fillets.
les deux cuisses en retrait.
With the 2 legs, as it were, at the back of the
Je
plate.
pose mon toast
I put this on top.
sur l'ensemble. Je pose dessus parce que si
And I put the toast on top
je mets dans la sauce, le
because
toast
if
va
I
être
put
trempé,
it
ça va être
in the sauce, the toast is going to get soaked. So there is the sauce. The sauce is ready.
un peu lié, parce qu'elle est liée avec le
This has to be a
foie
little thick.
gras. Quelle est la couleur?
It's thickened with the foie gras. It should have a nice color. It should look lovely.
Je mets un cordon dans le fond de
I add a
l'assiette.
string of sauce onto the plate, but only a little,
Je préfère en mettre un peu
and
à
separately.
part si le client le désire.
if the customer wishes.
Autour, surtout ne pas napper le canard.
Above
laisser la peau
all,
bien
the
craquante.
duck shouldn't be covered with sauce. The skin has to be
Je mets
nicely
quelques
crisp.
navets en garniture.
A few turnips for the garnish.
Voilà. Servir bien chaud.
Serve
les
this
assiettes
piping
bien chaudes,
hot.
bien sûr.
Obviously, the plates must be really hot.
Ça part.
And serve the sauce separately. Here we are, the Ferté style duck. This is a rich dish
Un bon cigare.
which deserves a nice cigar afterwards and a comfortable armchair.
Personally, because I'm very attached to this establishment, I told myself that something should be done to celebrate the 100th anniversary. So, 13 years ago, I decided to commemorate this anniversary, but in a very special way, to please both the customers and the staff. So I spent 10 years of my leisure time to build a model of the large room, which I built to a 1/10 scale.
La grande salle que j'ai réalisée à l'échelle d'1 dixième. Vous parlez de cette maquette.
About that model, well, I'm very attached to it because seeing it would be much better. It's difficult to describe in detail all the difficulties that I experienced, since I'm only a head waiter and not a cabinet maker. But I really put my heart into this project, and I think it pleased the customers, who were able to see it in the entrance hall, where it was exhibited for 4 months.
Now we're going to make a 3 chocolate mousse, using plain chocolate, of course, white chocolate and milk chocolate. In addition, we'll need some 15 eggs, 160 grams of fresh cream, 16 grams of butter, 3/4 of a liter of milk, 150 grams of sugar, a vanilla pod, and some fresh mint. Now let's start by melting the plain chocolate. Use a knife and you chop the chocolate a little like this so that it melts much faster. And we'll put this in the boiler. There. And while the chocolate is melting, we're going to line a mold. This mold is about 25 centimeters long. And then we're going to line the inside of the mold. You let some of the paper stick out so that you can use it later to cover the top. So the mold is now lined. As for the eggs now, we're going to separate the whites from the yolks. You first of all take 5 eggs. Here is the melted chocolate with the butter, the fresh cream and the egg yolks. And now we're going to whip up the egg whites
avec une petite pincée de sel
with a little pinch of salt, very, very little,
pour empêcher de grainer.
to
Et
prevent
on
granulation.
commence
And now we start
tout doucement.
very, very gently.
On met un tout petit peu
We
de
add
sucre
a
semé,
tiny bit of caster sugar,
léger, environ
rather lightly.
une cuillerée.
about a tablespoonful.
Voilà, ça
There,
suffit.
that's enough.
On prend environ le
Now we
quart
take
blanc,
1/4 of the egg whites,
on le mélange
we mix them
avec le fouet
using the whisk
pour détendre
in order to loosen the chocolate a little
le
bit,
chocolat. Et on rajoute
and then we
la
add
totalité
all of the egg whites,
des blancs d'œufs. Et on mélange
and then we mix.
en soulevant
We mix this by
délicatement.
lifting delicately like this.
Quand c'est bien mélangé,
And once this is nicely mixed together,
doit être de
the
même
mousse should be
couleur.
uniformly colored throughout.
Maintenant, nous allons mouler
Now we're going
la
to
première
mold
mousse. Il faut
the first
environ
mousse.
que la mousse fasse 3 cm.
The mousse should be spread over about a thickness of 3 centimeters. And then you spread equally and smoothly using the back of a spoon to make sure it's nice and smooth. And once it's smooth, we put it into the freezer for about half an hour minimum. Now, the white chocolate. First of all, it needs to be melted, and then you mix in the butter and the melted cream. But you don't add the egg yolk, because this will give a yellowish color and it wouldn't look very nice. A little white, lightly mixed in with whisk.
On y rajoute
You add the rest of the egg white
bien mélangé
and make sure it's all well mixed in
de façon qu'il n'y ait pas de grains de blanc.
to make sure there are no grains of white.
Vous avez une très jolie mousse blanche.
And here we have a
Nous
very
allons mettre
lovely
le
white
chocolat
mousse.
blanc sur
And
le
now
dessus
we're going
du
to put the
noir.
white chocolate
Toujours environ
over the
une
dark.
épaisseur
Once again, a thickness of about 3 centimeters, just over an inch.
également.
And once again, we smooth this in the same way with the back of the spoon, and we place this once again in the freezer for about half an hour.
Pour finir notre
Now,
mousse,
to finish our mousse,
après une demi-heure, voici
after a half hour,
la mousse
here is the
au chocolat au
milk
lait,
chocolate
qui est la
mousse,
même.
which is exactly the same as the plain chocolate mousse. That is to say, it's made with butter,
Les œufs
the
et la
eggs,
crème.
and the fresh cream.
On égalise le tout.
You smooth out the top,
Nous allons
and then we cover the sides.
les côtés. Bien enveloppé.
We wrap it up
Et nous allons
nicely,
mettre ça pendant toute la
and we
nuit
place it
au
in the
congélateur.
freezer for a whole night.
Maintenant, nous allons faire la
And
crème
now,
anglaise à l'amande.
we're going to make a light
Trois
mint
quarts de
custard
litre
cream.
de lait.
You take 3/4 of a liter of milk, you pour this into a cooking pot, into a pan, you add a vanilla pod,
On fend par le milieu.
which you slice down the middle,
Voilà,
there,
comme ceci.
like that.
Et on va faire bouillir
And now we
le lait.
bring the milk to
Le
a
lait
boil.
vient de bouillir.
The milk is
On
just
met
boiled,
à infuser
and now we
l'amande
infuse this
pendant environ
with
2
the
heures.
mint for about 2 hours.
Quand le lait est refroidi,
When the milk is cooled,
prenons 8 jaunes d'œufs
we then take 8 egg yolks, which we beat
avec 150 grammes
with 150 grams of sugar.
On travaille environ 2 minutes.
We work this in for about 2 minutes in order to whiten the mix. Good. Now, when the milk is cold,
Au chinois,
we're going to put it through the sieve,
quand le lait bout à nouveau,
and when the milk boils
on
again,
rajoute un petit
you
peu
then add a
sur les
little
jaunes et le
bit
sucre.
to the egg yolks and to the sugar,
On mélange
and you mix this all together.
Et on remet tout
And
dans
you
la
put
casserole.
everything back into the saucepan.
Faites bien attention.
Now be very careful.
Faites pocher
You must poach
sans
this,
faire bouillir.
but don't boil
Et
it.
la crème anglaise est
And now
terminée.
the
Nous
custard
allons la
cream
faire refroidir.
is finished. And we're going to cool it down.
Maintenant, nous allons procéder au démoulage.
Now we'll remove it from the mold. We dip it first in warm water.
On enlève le papier
We remove the paper.
et nous allons démouler sur un disque.
And then we turn it out onto a disc.
Et on le met sur le côté.
And we place it
Maintenant,
on
nous
its
allons
side.
colorer un petit
And
peu
now we're going
avec du
to
colorant.
color
La
the
crème
custard
anglaise,
cream
mais très, très peu.
with some food coloring, but very, very little.
Un peu de crème anglaise
We pour a little custard cream
dans le fond de l'assiette.
onto the bottom of the plate.
Nous allons couper
We then cut a slice.
une tranche. Voici donc un
And there
dessert
we have a
très
dessert
facile à
which is
faire,
very easy
qui
to
est
make
très
and which is
rafraîchissant
very
après un
refreshing after a good meal.
No matter where your feet take you when you leave Maxim's, whatever the intensity of the heady feeling resulting from the pleasures and neon lights of the City of Light, your tired senses will be drawn to this compelling music, and you'll rush to it as one rushes to love.
Nikita.
The Nikita was the greatest Russian restaurant 25, 30 years ago. The favorite for many celebrities, Joseph Kessel, the writer, Orson Welles, the King of Morocco, and many, many more. It was the Novi of the time, and the name still brings fond memories to all the customers of that time who loved this Russian restaurant. When people come here who already knew the Novi, they come here and have tears in their eyes. So I wanted to recreate that atmosphere with a little less of the cabaret side, especially since the cuisine is very good. We get a very good rating in the Go et Mio guide. Tonight, the Nikita is welcoming Laurent Bacall, who came to celebrate her birthday with her friends. The best gypsy orchestra in Paris is at her feet, and the shadow of Bogart is jubilating in the smoke from the cigarettes. I was one of the very first to open a Russian restaurant that was not a cabaret, that was affordable, enabling people to come and spend a nice evening without going bankrupt. The Karloff was my favorite place here in Paris. We need this music, especially as the musicians are extraordinary. If you wish me to describe the Nikita and the Karloff in a single sentence, I'd say it means everyone can spend an evening fit for a king, because music makes the heart grow fonder. In the kitchen, the chef will satisfy the most insatiable diners with his marinated salmon in puff pastry, topping a vegetable fondue, followed by his beef and lamb stroganoff, and ending with his delicate pear crisp with red wine.